her integrity is not in question. She's not a corrupt person.
That's Peter Dutton's take on the newly released New South Wales ICAC report. The report found that Gladys Berejiklian and her former boyfriend, Daryl Maguire, both engaged in serious corrupt conduct. But before we get into that, here's a quick recap in case you've missed the background. Daryl Maguire was the former New South Wales Liberal MP for Wagga Wagga. Turns out, he spent his time trying different corrupt money-making methods. Things like cash for visa schemes, or trying to get kickbacks from property developers. A few years ago, ICAC was investigating a local council in Sydney, and as part of that, Daryl started appearing on their phone taps. ICAC decided to look closer into Daryl, and they found a whole bunch of dodgy dealings. And in 2018, when public hearings first revealed his corrupt conduct, he resigned from New South Wales Parliament. But ICAC wasn't done. It had phone taps between Daryl and the then New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian, and it knew that they were in a secret, close, personal relationship for many years, even after Daryl's corruption was publicly revealed. This led ICAC to start a fresh investigation called Operation Keppel, which looked specifically at both Daryl and Gladys. Gladys resigned as Premier after this investigation was announced, and this is the long-awaited report that's just been released. I'll make a more detailed video of this investigation later on, but just to briefly go through the findings, it's clear that they're very severe. Daryl Maguire was found to have engaged in serious corrupt conduct between 2012 and 2018, and he had so many corrupt dealings that it took ICAC 3 pages to list them all. For Gladys Berejiklian, and this won't be surprising if you've heard any of the evidence from the public hearings, she was also found to have engaged in serious corrupt conduct. The Commission came to this conclusion because of 2 main reasons. First, she made a number of funding decisions for large projects that Daryl was pushing for, without disclosing that she had a conflict of interest because of their relationship. This was the spending of public money that was potentially influenced by an undisclosed conflict of interest. Now, disclosing conflicts like this was a requirement under the New South Wales Ministerial Code of Conduct, but Gladys's lawyers argued to the Commission that as Premier, the Code of Conduct didn't apply to her. It's honestly an extraordinary attempt to justify her actions, and the Commission didn't buy it. The second thing was that Gladys failed to notify ICAC of her suspicions that Daryl Maguire was engaged in potentially corrupt conduct. This is a duty that government ministers have, to report to ICAC suspect conduct. The Commission found that by at least September 2017, Gladys had reached a state of actual suspicion about Daryl, and that she should have acted, but she didn't.
And the good news is, William tells me we've done our deal, so hopefully that's about half of all that gone now.
That's good. I don't need to know about that bit.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
You do not.
Now, these are severe findings, and the reactions, well, they've been interesting.
Well, Carla, in Gladys, I know somebody who is absolutely a wonderful person. She's first class, and what you see in public is what you get in private as well. She's just a very decent person. She chose a bum, basically, and he was a bad guy. And I think that she has, paid a big price for that. And her integrity is not in question. She's not a corrupt person. That's not the person that I know, and I think she should hold her head high. She had a bad relationship, as everybody does. And my view is that if there is a finding of serious corruption, that should be a finding by a judge and jury. That is a very serious allegation to make against any individual, and particularly somebody who is as esteemed as Gladys, and somebody who served her state with great distinction. So that's what causes me most concern. I just think if matters are to be tested, they're to be tested in a court of law, and you can't just go out there and besmirch somebody's character by making this sort of serious allegation.
This is clearly undermining the findings of the New South Wales ICAC. Apparently, Peter Dutton's test is that a judge and jury needs to convict someone of a criminal charge, and only then can they be labelled corrupt. But that's not how things work. The thresholds required to be charged and convicted for the criminal charge of misconduct in public office is very high, and corruption is hidden and evidence is difficult to obtain. That's the whole point of having anti-corruption agencies. They have the power to compel evidence that would otherwise never be revealed by a normal police investigation or a court case. Bodies like ICAC then make clear, factual findings, and there are legal tests that need to be met before they can say that someone has engaged in corrupt conduct. That's why there's a report that goes for almost 700 pages. When the federal version of the ICAC, the National Anti-Corruption Commission, or NACC, was being introduced, this was what Peter Dutton said at the time.
There's no place for corrupt behaviour in public life here in Canberra or anywhere around the country.
But it's clear now that those words were meaningless. And the timing of him coming out now and defending Gladys and denouncing ICAC is suspicious. It comes at the same time that the federal NACC begins operations.
Together, today, we introduce to the people of Australia your National Anti-Corruption Commission.
More on that later in the video. Maybe it's a defence mechanism because many of his colleagues, or maybe he himself, might end up in front of the NACC, so best to undermine his work right from the beginning. Here's some more reactions. This is from the New South Wales Liberal opposition leader, Mark Speakman, and the New South Wales Liberal Shadow Attorney General, Alistair Henskens.
The Gladys I know and observed as an MP and a minister was an honest MP who served the people of New South Wales with incredible dedication. She was an outstanding Premier for New South Wales. She was an incredibly popular Premier because she worked her guts out for the people of New South Wales.
Firstly, Gladys Berejiklian worked incredibly hard for our state. People like Mark and I saw it up close, and she has made a substantial contribution to public life in this state, and that needs to be acknowledged.
This is a common theme, focusing on how hard-working Gladys apparently was, which is irrelevant because she's been found to have engaged in serious corrupt conduct, which is the more important point that these politicians don't want to talk about. Here's another New South Wales Liberal, Matt Keane, who was the Treasurer before Labor won the last state election. He's a friend of Gladys and was not happy with the findings.
I think the point is that her own testimony in the stand was that she didn't know anything was wrong. Now, ICAC have said they don't believe her, and that's fine. Well, I believe Gladys Berejiklian, and I think millions of people also believe Gladys Berejiklian. But I will say this, I've known Gladys for 20 years. What I read in that report yesterday doesn't reflect the person I know. And basically, she was dating a weirdo. Well, I, like the rest of New South Wales, is still scratching my head. I'm trying to understand exactly what this finding means. This report clearly says that she's not corrupt enough to refer it off to the DPP for criminal charges. So which one is it? Yeah. Every other ICAC probe in the state has referred the person they've named as corrupt off to the DPP to face criminal charges.
That last bit is simply not true. In an ICAC report released only months ago, the Commission found someone to have engaged in serious corrupt conduct, but they weren't referred to the Department of Public Prosecutions, or DPP, for potential criminal charges, and there are plenty of other examples of this happening over the years. The reason this happens is because the definition of corrupt conduct under the ICAC Act is different to the definition used for criminal charges for the offence of misconduct in public office. This isn't a new problem, and one person who would have been in a position to fix this was Matt Keane, who was part of the coalition government in power for over 10 years. But only now that his mate Gladys has a serious finding made against her, all of a sudden he's confused and scratching his head. I don't buy it for a second, and this is another example of the deliberate undermining of the ICAC. This point about Gladys being found to be seriously corrupt, but a referral not being made to the DPP, is one that is getting a lot of airtime.
Many people have been left baffled as to how the ICAC could find that Gladys Berejiklian is corrupt, but not corrupt enough to prosecute.
You won't be surprised, but Channel 7 didn't go on to then inform their baffled viewers as to why this may be the case. It was easier to just make it seem like it's a mystery, which plays nicely into the Liberal Party narrative. But the reasons for this were clearly set out in the ICAC report. For example, for her failure to report suspicious conduct to ICAC, the Commission said that there would be insufficient admissible evidence for criminal prosecution. But the Commission was still able to find that she had acted corruptly because it was able to force her to give evidence, something the criminal court can't do. Ultimately, this is a problem with the law, and if anything needs to be changed, it's making sure the threshold for criminal charges is aligned to the corrupt behaviour we want to deter. But also remember, in many cases, ICAC's recommendations to the prosecutor don't actually result in charges being laid. That's why it's a part of the ICAC's role to publish their findings publicly, and that in itself can be an effective deterrent and a form of punishment. Another disappointing take was from New South Wales Labor Premier Chris Minns.
Firstly, this report's taken way too long. I think that's been generally recognised across the political spectrum in New South Wales.
This is another common comment, and while it's not ideal for reports to take so long, if he's so concerned, then maybe he should bump up ICAC's funding. That's what Labor promised they would do if they won the 2023 election. In any case, the delay is being investigated by the Inspector of the ICAC, who is someone who investigates the conduct of ICAC and makes sure they are compliant with the law.
The second point here is that nothing in this report takes away, I don't think, from Premier Berejiklian's handling of the COVID emergency, which I still regard as being excellent.
Again, this is completely irrelevant and ignores the serious findings that have been made. No doubt there'll be more bad takes, but the fact is that the findings by ICAC against both Daryl and Gladys were serious. Everyone coming out in public and trying to minimise this is just showing their true colours on what they really think about integrity in government, and they're all undermining the work of anti-corruption bodies. And this undermining comes at an interesting time. In July 2023, just a few days ago, the federal NACC began its operations.
We conduct corruption investigations, not criminal investigations. There are other agencies for criminal investigations. If as a result of a corruption investigation we are satisfied there's been corrupt conduct, we will issue a report with a finding to that effect. Such a finding is a serious one, not lightly to be made. But it is important to recognise that conduct can be corrupt without being criminal, and that we do not make findings of criminal guilt to which different rules of evidence and proof apply. If there is evidence of criminal conduct, we may refer it to a prosecuting agency. But it is precisely in the area where it may not be possible to establish criminal conduct to the high criminal standard of proof that the Commission's work can be most important in enhancing integrity by investigating and exposing corrupt conduct even where it cannot be prosecuted in a criminal court. By 5 p.m. yesterday, we had received 44 referrals online and 5 telephone requests for callbacks, which will happen today. We will more likely be interested in investigating matters that have current practical relevance rather than those that are historic. I undertake to you, the people of the Commonwealth, that I will, to the best of my ability, fearlessly, fairly and impartially discharge the duties of this office.
It's going to be interesting seeing what matters the NACC looks into initially. It's just a shame that because of shady deals Labor struck with the coalition, we likely won't be seeing public hearings in the way that we have from the New South Wales ICAC. For my full rundown of whether the NACC model is any good, you can check out this video, link in the description. And as always, thanks for watching, and thank you to everyone on Patreon who is keeping this channel going. If you'd like to support me make more content, then I'll have a link to Patreon in the description.